The messenger, the message, and the means to stop them both. Journalists under fire. I'm Brent Goff, and this is The Day. In Turkey, they are paraded in public like hardened criminals. Journalists arrested in the massive purging of the poisonous pen.
After we declared a 3-month state of emergency, certain circles voiced their discomfort. My brothers, first of all, we need to restructure the state. Therefore, we need to review the structure from top to toe.
And in the heart of Berlin, propaganda pushers intent on intimidating independent journalists, and they are armed with cameras and outrageous lies.
And I want to know why you guys, the Lügenpresse, why you tell so many lies.
And like criminals, they flee the scene before police and the truth catch them.
And call the police.
Also on the show, gay in Uganda. It's a crime and it can get you killed. And yet they dare to celebrate Pride Week. Tonight we'll ask, where is the hope coming from? Well, welcome everyone. We begin the day with muzzling the messenger. Dozens of Turkish journalists are behind bars tonight, suspected of sympathizing with the coup that tried and failed to topple President Erdogan last month. Now, these are just some of the journalists who have been arrested since that attempted coup on July 16th. It is part of a crackdown that's cutting across Turkish society. About 18,000 people have been detained, most of them from the military. Tens of thousands more have been thrown out of their jobs. Police, judges, teachers, even soccer referees. The government says that they're all part of a huge underground network, a terrorist network, they call it, run by the cleric Fethullah Gulen. Now, he has been living in the United States in self-imposed exile for years in the state of Pennsylvania. Well, according to President Erdogan, Gulen's reach is extensive, especially in the media. That includes the Zaman newspaper, which was taken over by the government back in March, and since the coup attempt has basically been shut down. Well, one of the writers for the English language paper was and is my guest tonight, Mahir Zeynalov, who joins us now from Washington. Mahir, it's good to have you back on the show. We appreciate you taking the time to talk with us tonight. I want to kind of get an idea from you. What kind of media, what kind of news are people in Turkey getting now with so many media outlets being shut down?
Well, actually, it's not a recent phenomenon. In the past several years, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has been cracking down on the media so hard that at least 18 TV channels were shut down last year and 16 of them were shut down this year. The recent purges of the media and the rest of journalists are not really news. In the past few years, we had seen a variety of means that the Turkish government had employed to muzzle dissent. So we can say that almost entire Turkish TV networks are tightly controlled by the government. And in Turkey, where people mostly watch TV and get their news from TV channels, especially the electorate of President Erdogan, well, it's safe to say that they are just brainwashing the society 24/7, and there's almost no way, perhaps one or two marginal TV channels that could convey the critical ideas about the government.
President Erdogan says that there is evidence to justify these shutdowns. When your newspaper was taken over earlier this year, and then, of course, when it was shut down, were you provided with the evidence to justify this move?
Well, the evidence was that, our newspaper was part of a terror organization. And also there were some news outlets, some of the articles that they showed as evidence that spread the terror propaganda and support the terror organization. Of course, these charges are ludicrous and farcical. And it's not recent that a Turkish president had been trying to crack down on our newspaper. They first sent state-controlled administrators to take over the newspaper. They fired dozens of journalists, including me, and they shut it down last week. So it's just funny when they say that these newspapers are aligned with a terrorist organization. This is the abuse of Turkey's vague and broad anti-terrorism law. They're just painting with a broad brush every news outlet, every journalist with spreading terror propaganda, and they're just jailing them. They're just slapping with hefty fines, with punishments. So this is just a routine stuff for the government.
What about the cleric, Fethullah Gulen, and his reach? You worked for one of his publications, and I mean, I have to ask you, did the cleric, did he ever influence your reporting and what you wrote?
Well, I was working for the English language newspaper Today's Zaman, that's a sister newspaper of Zaman, which is the largest selling newspaper in Turkey. And I can say that half of our staff were even non-Muslims. Of course, its editorial line was sympathetic to Gulen and his ideas, but the newspaper did not really promote his ideas. It was not a religious newspaper of any sort. It's just what we can say that most people working in that newspaper were, of course, sympathized with the Gulen movement. But it was not a newspaper that promoted his ideas. But of course, the editorial line mostly fell in line with the principles of the movement.
Well, the principles of the movement. I mean, did you have people in editorial meetings who were open about wanting the Erdogan government to end or to be overthrown? I mean, was that part of an open discussion or even an open secret?
Well, our newspaper was just a professional, news organization. Every morning we gathered as editors. We just, discussed what was going on in Turkey and in its vicinity in the world, and we highlighted the most important stories, and we tried to put them on the front page. So this is, I mean, what other TV networks or newspapers were doing. We're just doing the same. Of course, we had editorial pages, opinion pages, and of course we had a wide variety of opinions were being submitted to our newspapers, and our op-ed editors were selecting them. And of course, the newspaper was closely aligned with the government, and you could see how the opinions were pro-government. But after, perhaps in the past 2 or 3 years, the editorial line shifted more critically. But it's funny to say that. I mean, it's even impossible for editors to orchestrate or just plot anything like that. We're just reporters that were just writing what was important on that day.
You went to Twitter after the coup attempt, and you've basically documented each and every journalist that has been detained. And that has gone viral. And we want to show as many of these photos as we can tonight. And we maybe want to talk about, about 1 or 2 of the people that you've posted. Maybe if we could show that now, since we're talking about it. There we go. Let's look at this one right here. Maybe you could tell us. This is, and I want to make sure I get the name right. This is Nazli Ilsak. Is that right?
Yeah, Nazlı Ilıcak, right?
Okay,
well, she's a 72 years old veteran columnist. She worked for dozens of newspapers. She were frequent commentators on TV channels. Everyone in their right mind in Turkey knows that if there's anyone to be blamed for a coup, she is not the one. She always promoted liberal democracy. She always wanted more freedoms and rights for minorities. She always pushed for more civil liberties. It's just unacceptable. It's just ridiculous that she's right now in jail and arrested on coup charges.
Oh. And let's look at one more. I think we've got a picture of him, and that is Bülent Mumay. Is that correct?
Right. Well, Bülent Mamay was a digital editor of Turkish mainstream newspaper Hürriyet. But we also know from some of the tape recordings that Erdogan's inner circle were really disturbed by his writing. And he also were very neutral journalists, very objective journalists, an excellent reporter, excellent editor. He was an extraordinary in standing up against the government. I don't know why he parted ways with the Hürriyet. Perhaps that was a pressure by the government, but he was soon released because they couldn't find really anything to charge with him, because he was what he has done in his entire life was just reporting. You know, when I saw these statistics and numbers that were swirling around in the world media, I thought, why the international community is not doing something, or the United States or the European Union, why they cannot stop it? I mean, these are not just the numbers on a piece of paper, but each reporter, each columnist there has a story to tell. And these are the journalists that, you know, I asked questions to officials during press conferences. We were on the field together, and we worked together, perhaps in the same newsroom or in different newspapers. So these are really people that I feel like my colleagues, and I would be one of them, you know, if I were in Turkey. So I really wanted to go out on the social media and tell their stories.
Yeah, you've definitely, you know, you've definitely done a service of getting the message out and about what has happened to them. You know, 2 nights ago you were on the show, and you were involved in a heated exchange with a member of Erdogan's AK party. After seeing that, a lot of people who've watched the show, you know, they've asked, is there any way to find common ground now in Turkey? Is anyone and everyone critical of Erdogan? Are they now automatically an enemy of the state?
Well, you could see from the show, I mean, those who watch the show, you could clearly see how polarized the society is. There's no way that two people with different views could sit together and discuss in a gentle form. And you could see how the members of the government are so arrogant in trying to shut down other views and opinions. They really feel that they have the, you know, higher ground. And you could see, I mean, that was a very, you know, symbolic episode of what's going on in Turkey, how they treat journalists, how they call journalists as terrorists, how they dismiss their opinions as someone who are actually treacherous to the homeland. That's what they say. So that was just one small chapter of what journalists face in everyday life in Turkey. It's a very dangerous and risky place to do journalism in Turkey at the moment. And the polarization is running so deep and so high that for anyone, any journalist, even, you know, the international football star, you know, Miss Turkey, or even school kids, there's no way that you could criticize the government or criticize the president and get away with that.
Oh, well, Mahir Zeynalov, journalist in Washington, D.C., doing his part to get the story out about the situation for journalists in Turkey. Mahir, thank you very much for taking the time. We appreciate it.